I am answering your question.
Which period was America great that we're trying to replicate? Which era was it? Tell me.
I think I'll answer your question. I'm ready to answer your question.
Candace Owens once declared herself the most controversial black woman in America. It's a bold self-coronation that even her fiercest critics might grudgingly accept for entirely different reasons. Owens has built a career on incendiary takes and ideological flips that challenge mainstream black narratives. But to truly understand the psychology behind her polarizing persona, we turn to an unlikely source. Aaron McGruder's The Boondocks, a biting satirical cartoon that wasn't just entertainment, it was a mirror. In Magruder's world, 5 archetypal black characters personify what he called the 5 types of minds left after slavery, each one a survival strategy, a psychological imprint, or a reaction to power. The revolutionary embodied by Huey Freeman, the sharp-eyed justice seeker who sees through the illusions of the system and confronts it without compromise, even if it means standing alone. The misguided captured in Riley Freeman, the flashy rebel shaped by pain, media, and a craving for approval. He fights authority, but without clarity or purpose, mistaking chaos for revolution. The self-hating personified by Uncle Ruckus, the tragic product of deep-rooted indoctrination. He's a man who worships his oppressor and hates his own reflection, carrying generational trauma repackaged as loyalty. The disconnected represented by Tom Dubois, the polished professional who made it. He's protected by status, but often unaware of the traps still hidden in the system he thinks he escaped. And finally, the survivalist granddad Freeman, the weary elder who's seen too much. He doesn't want to fight, he just wants peace, even if that means turning a blind eye to injustice as long as he stays fed and safe. As we peel back the layers of Candace Owens' rhetoric and strategy, a provocative question emerges. Which of these 5 mindsets defines Candace Owens most? Keep that in mind, because by the end of this journey through her public life and psychology, we might have an answer, and it speaks volumes about navigating black identity in a world still shaped by racial trauma.
Some little nigga named Huey Freeman. Apparently he all critical of the network and shit, talking about he's starting a hunger strike.
Why? What did we ever do to him except try to destroy black people? What's the problem?
This hunger strike will continue until BET is taken off the air, the office is shut down, and all its top executives commit Japanese ritual suicide.
He's just a kid. No one can stand in my way of destroying black people. Especially not Huey Freeman.
Huey Freeman is the revolutionary fiercely woke, eternally confronting injustice, and often standing alone because of it. Huey sees the system clearly and dedicates himself to fighting oppression, even when it makes him a pariah. If we use Huey as a yardstick, Candace Owens lands on the opposite end. Owens is not the voice calling out systemic racism. In fact, she loudly denies that systemic racism is a serious issue at all. Consider Owens' own words. Testifying before Congress in 2019, she casually dismissed the threat of white nationalism, saying, "White supremacy and white nationalism is not a problem that is harming Black America," ranking it so low that if I had to make a list of 100 things, white nationalism would not make the list. Instead, she argued Black communities should worry more about absentee fathers and Black-on-Black crime. This perspective is a far cry from Huey Freeman's systemic awareness. Huey would rail against institutional injustice like police brutality, but Owens often rails against the victims. In the wake of racial justice protests, Owens has castigated Black victims of police violence like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd as thugs and criminals, while characterizing the Black Lives Matter movement as being about Black anarchy. Where a revolutionary sees racist oppression to be challenged, Owens sees what she calls a victim mentality to be condemned.
You would rather assign meaning to a homicidal maniac than to actually address the things that I said today that are actually harming Black America. Number 1, father absence. Number 2, the education system and the illiteracy rate. Illegal immigration ranks high, abortion ranks high, white supremacy and white nationalism, if I had to make a list again of 100 things, would not be on it. This hearing, in my opinion, is a farce, and it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do I know what my expertise are? black in America. I've been black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
In Owens' view, racism isn't an insurmountable structural force, it's an overhyped excuse. She has said, racism exists, but it is far less rampant than ignorance, framing lack of personal responsibility as the bigger issue. Her 2020 book, Blackout: How Black America Can Make Its Second Escape from the Democrat Plantation, urges black people to liberate themselves not by protest, but by rejecting the left's victim narrative and embracing conservative ideals of self-reliance. The book likened black Americans' loyalty to Democrats to slavery on a political plantation. This worldview puts her at odds with the Huey Freeman archetype on every front. Huey fights the system head-on, often at personal cost, but Owens questions whether the system is even holding anyone back. She preaches that anyone can thrive in America by choice, declaring, if you are born black and you don't accept your natural status as a victim, then the validity of your blackness is immediately called into question. It's a pointed jab at those who, in her eyes, choose to see themselves as oppressed.
When you say make America great again, which period are we talking about? The period when women couldn't vote? The period when we were hanging from trees?
I'll answer.
Or like the crack era? Which period in America are you trying to make America like
So
again?
I actually think that I would totally rock a hat right now that said make Black America great again. Because Black America,
make America.
Before,
We're talking about make America. That wasn't the question.
I am answering your question.
Which period was America great that we're trying to replicate? Which era was it? Tell me.
I think I'll answer your question.
Tell me.
I'm ready to answer your question.
Which era was it?
What?
Which era was so great?
Here's the thing that you guys are forgetting. America was actually one of the slavery was all over the world. All over the world. America was, I'm not saying it's okay, so why are you saying, oh?
Hey, man.
America was one of the first countries.
I want to like you so bad.
I'm trying to answer your question.
I want to like you so much.
I can't answer the question.
I want to hear y'all. I want to be able to hear them. I want to be able to hear them.
If I can't answer the question and you're just going to boo when I say slavery was all over the world, which is a fact, why are you booing a fact?
Because you're making light of...
No, I'm not.
You're making light of the enslavement of people that look like us. You can't make light of that. That ain't nothing you breeze over.
I haven't even finished the sentence. How am I making light of anything?
You started with some bull.
So what she was trying to say and did say eventually is that America was one of the first countries to, she said, free our ancestors. Nope, it was one of the last. So it's just revisionist history. And then the question is, why? Why are you doing revisionist history?
Because that money is real nice, right? I mean, look, come on, are we gonna pretend like she isn't influenced by the same influences that have changed the political ideology of individuals like Dave Rubin? And here's the thing, when you are a grifter, yeah, there's an upside to that because you get to collect that money and you live a nice lifestyle and you don't have to work as hard as individuals who are trying to put the truth out there. But at the same time, grifters aren't ever able to back up their arguments. And then you find yourself in these awkward situations where you might get asked to do a panel, you might get an offer. You might get an offer where you get paid a lot to do a panel like this. I don't know if she got paid for this or not, but then you have to somehow defend the nonsense that comes out of your mouth in your YouTube videos. And you can't because the facts don't back up your argument.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, I would love to have interrogated her on that. So was she referring to a Reconstruction period where for a very brief period in the South after the Civil War, when the Southern racists were thoroughly defeated, there was a brief moment where African Americans were allowed to own land and start their own businesses, and we had a black governor of Louisiana? I doubt she's referring to that. Okay, but you know what happened after that is Jim Crow. And for 100 years, then they robbed them of that land. They burned down their businesses. And as T.I. pointed out, hung them from trees and didn't allow them to participate in the political process. And so that stretched all the way into the 1960s. And in the 1960s, in the Civil Rights Movement, the burning of black churches, and we can go on and on. So it is an incredibly fair question that T.I. is asking. What America are we talking about? And that's the whole point of Make America Great Again, which is make it great for the people that were in charge, the white right-wingers. That's what the reference is too. It wasn't great for African Americans. Oftentimes it's not great for Latinos or Asians, etc. And that statement basically says, I don't give a damn about you. I don't care that it wasn't good for you. In fact, I'd like to return to a time where it was terrible for you. And that's why at the end analysis, it is indefensible.
Yeah, it is indefensible. That was, even though I enjoy watching people like Candace Owens get their comeuppance and get confronted by people who actually know what they're talking about, that was pretty difficult to watch, right? Because first of all, she immediately pivots to doing what people like her do all the time, which is they start answering a completely different question. And I like the fact that T.I. was privy to that, knew it was gonna happen, and held her accountable, held her feet to the fire, and demanded an answer to his question. And she failed to provide a real answer that was backed up by real facts. And the thing that drives me crazy is that in this society where people are hungry for resources, and I get it, it's tough to go out there and try to make a living in the media, it really is. But at the same time, think about the damage you do in accepting the type of influence that she has decided to accept. Think about how many people you hurt through pushing this false narrative and this revisionist history.
For a real revolutionary, calling out oppression is a duty, not a choice to play victim. Owens' antagonism toward the Black Lives Matter movement and her minimization of white supremacy reveal a complete rejection of Huey's mission for social justice. Instead of isolation for speaking truth to power, Owens has been rewarded with prominence for telling powers that be what they prefer to hear. So if Candace Owens isn't our Huey Freeman, fighting for the people, what exactly is fueling her contrarian crusade? Keep that question in mind as we turn to another Boondocks archetype.
Describe Riley Freeman in one word.
I say real nigga.
Real nigga is 2 words.
I know it's 2 words, nigga. Real niggas don't follow instructions.
This is Robert Freeman's other grandson, Riley. He's empowered by the prospect of a black president, but not in the way society would hope or expect.
Oh, if my nigga Obama gets up in there, I'm gonna act a fool. I ain't doing no more homework, nothing. We taking over. Come on, what's the cop gonna do to me? I'ma be like, don't make me call the president, bitch. And the cops, he gonna be like, oh, snap. Riley a real nigga. The president's a real nigga. We can't do nothing. I can't wait.
If Huey stands for the revolutionary, then Riley is the misguided, the rebel drawn to noise, not nuance. He's fueled by spectacle, chasing clout over clarity, image over insight. But beneath the bravado is a kid molded by media fantasies and unresolved pain. His rebellion looks bold, but it's hollow. So it begs the question, when Candace Owens leans into controversy, is it principle she's pushing or performance? If Huey stands for the revolutionary, then Riley is the misguided rebel drawn to noise, not nuance. He's fueled by spectacle, chasing clout over clarity, image over insight. But beneath the bravado is a kid molded by media fantasies and unresolved pain. His rebellion looks bold, but it's hollow. So it begs the question, when Candace Owens leans into controversy, is she pushing principle or performance?
Mom, Dad, I'm a lesbian. I like girls. Oh, sweetheart. We always knew. Bottom line, we just want our children to be happy, and we love you regardless. Brave soul. Oh, thank you guys. Oh, also, I think I might be a conservative. I don't understand. I can't breathe. Hey, get that camera out of my wife's face. Get out of my face. Guys, it's totally fine. It's okay. I just, think a little more conservatively. But sweetheart, you're black. Yeah. Look, it was a crazy election cycle, a lot of emotions. We're gonna get you somebody to talk to, and you're gonna work through this entire mess. No, Dad, this is who I am. Oh, what about Beyonce? Yeah, what about Beyonce? You like Beyonce, you love Beyonce. Beyonce is a liberal, what's going on? I still do. It's just as a general rule, I don't think the Billboard 100 should dictate my political alignments. And what about all of our Spanish-speaking friends? I knew there were too many Caucasian people in this neighborhood. Oh, that's good, honey. Mm-hmm. Make me the bad guy, Mrs. I can't live without those hedges. Well, we're gonna need those hedges when the neighbors find out that our daughter is in the KKK. What? Guys, this is getting completely out of hand. Mom, I'm still black, and I still like Hispanic people. I simply think that we should maybe put the economical future of this country ahead of the social issues. That is all. Sweetie, can you please just be gay?
Candace's breakout moment came in 2017, not from a political think tank or grassroots movement, but from a viral YouTube sketch. In it, she comes out as a conservative to her imaginary liberal parents, and it instantly vaulted her into the spotlight of right-wing media. It was catchy and tailor-made for the algorithm, everything a modern political persona needs to take flight. But behind the skit was a whirlwind transformation that left many wondering, was this reinvention rooted in belief or branding?
Candace left college without graduating in 2010 and took a job at Vogue. In 2012, she took a new job at a private equity firm. By 2015, she quit that job to start her own media platform called Degree 180. The goal of the platform was to create, quote, better content for the internet, end quote. Candace would be the company's CEO, and Zoe Weiner, a rising beauty and fashion journalist who had been an intern at Vogue during Candace's time there, would be senior editor-in-chief. Candace wanted to change the way discourse unfolded on the internet. The platform hired writers to publish articles about various topics. Candace wrote articles as well. In 2016, Candace decided to create another platform called Social Autopsy. The proposal for the site was that it would allow users to submit social media posts anonymously. Then employees, schools, and any others who access the site could search the aggregated post by name. If a person were bullying another person under their real name, anyone could submit them to Social Autopsy, where their online messages could be found.
Words are real. People don't assign, there's no humanity behind what they say. They just think it's not real. And that's what technology takes away from children, the fact that it is real. And you would never in a million years say those things.
In March 2016, she spoke about the project. For the last year, I have worked on creating a website, socialautopsy.com, that will stop online bullying by outing the bullies. I create a searchable database of people who spew hate online. I hope it will make people think twice before they exercise their First Amendment rights online as a means to hurt others. Candace started a Kickstarter to raise money for the project and enlisted the help of engineers to begin development. On April 14, 2016, libertarian journalist Kathy Young came across the Kickstarter page and was concerned. Young tweeted about the project, wondering if it was a glorified doxing service. Candace reached out to Young to clarify that Social Autopsy was not going to be a doxing site. According to Merriam-Webster Dictionary, doxing is publicly identifying or publishing private information about someone, especially as a form of punishment or revenge. Candace told Young that the first iteration of Social Autopsy would only accept submissions of posts that contain personal information about the poster within the post itself. Social Autopsy would not research posts to uncover the identity of people who could not be identified within a post. Candace also assured Kathy that the platform would not reveal the identity of anonymous submitters. Young quoted Candace as saying this ability could be added in the future and that Owens didn't see a problem with revealing the identity of users that posted threats online. Once Young spoke to Candace and understood the true intention of the platform, she took down her tweet. By that time, it was too late. Before Young had even posted her tweet, others had seen the Kickstarter page and were raising concerns. Unbeknownst to Candace, she had wandered into a confusing, complex debate about anonymity and free speech on the internet. This controversy was called Gamergate.
Just a year earlier, Owens had been working on a very different project, an anti-cyberbullying startup called Social Autopsy. She positioned it as a tool to expose online harassment by documenting digital abuse, but the platform backfired. Privacy advocates, tech ethicists, and even progressive journalists raised alarms. The backlash was swift and, to Owens, deeply personal. She expected the left to stand with her. Instead, she felt vilified, isolated, and mobbed. In interviews since, Owens has cited that moment as her political awakening. I realized that liberals were actually the racists, she said. Liberals were actually the trolls. It was a full ideological pivot that seemed to happen almost overnight. To some, it read as a natural evolution, a woman burned by one tribe, finding refuge in another. But to others, the shift looked less like conviction and more like calculation. She had tapped into a lucrative niche, the defiant black conservative who challenges liberal orthodoxy and comforts conservative audiences. It was provocative, it was polarizing, and it was profitable. So, was Owens radicalized by real disillusionment? Or did she recognize, consciously or not, that outrage is currency and controversy sells? Candace Owens doesn't just welcome controversy, she chases it. Whether it's sparring with Cardi B on Twitter or linking arms with Kanye in a White Lives Matter tee, she knows exactly how to turn pop culture flare-ups into political theater. These moments aren't random, they're calculated. She's not just reacting to the culture war, she's producing it. And this is where the Riley Freeman parallel comes into sharp focus. Like Riley, Owens plays the rebel, but the rebellion often feels more about image than ideology. Her provocations don't always come with a deeper argument. Sometimes it seems like the point is just to get people talking, to stay in the headlines, to trigger a response. One conservative writer put it plainly, provocateur might be the most honest title she's ever had. Whether she's hosting a podcast, debating on Fox News, or stirring up a viral moment, it all feeds the same machine, attention. And in today's media ecosystem, attention is everything. Owens has mastered the outrage cycle. She knows how to push just hard enough to ignite a backlash, then ride that wave straight into a trending topic. It's bold, it's messy, and for many it's exhausting. But it works. The question is, what's driving it? Is it a belief, strategy, or something deeper, maybe even unspoken? If her role is to spark the fight, who's really writing the rules? But is Candace Owens really just misguided, chasing fame like Riley Freeman chases clout? Or is there a sharper game plan at work? She often tosses facts aside in favor of shock value. From pushing conspiracy theories about pop stars and politicians to weighing in on complex topics like science and history subjects, which she openly admits she's no expert in, Owens has built a career that often favors noise over nuance. It's easy to see echoes of Riley here, a loud voice, a flashy performance, and sometimes a shaky grip on the deeper stakes. Still, it would be a mistake to chalk it all up to cluelessness. Owens didn't just land in the spotlight, she worked her way into it. From viral YouTube clips to published books and a prime seat in conservative media circles, her ascent was no accident. She doesn't shy away from controversy, she thrives on it. As she's openly declared, it's not a side effect, it's the strategy. That level of self-possession hints at something more deliberate, less of a reckless agitator and more of a media tactician. So the real question isn't whether Owens understands the game she's playing, but it's whether we figured out our role in it. So, is Candace Owens simply a misguided rebel acting out a contrarian persona for attention? Or is there something more purposeful beneath the surface? That tension between performance and principle is hard to pin down. What we do know is that her provocations have earned her a loyal following and an equally vocal chorus of critics. She's built a brand on friction, and whether you admire or oppose her, you're likely paying attention. But maybe the real question isn't whether her rebellion is sincere, it's what fuels it. Is her defiance merely reactive, a way to stand out in a crowded media landscape? Or does it stem from something deeper, something more internalized? Because when contrarianism becomes compulsive, when it's less about ideas and more about identity, it starts to drift into darker territory. As we move forward, ask yourself, has Owens crossed a line? Are we witnessing a principled challenger, or Owens slipping into another troubling mindset?
He is the socialist Muslim Antichrist.
This is Uncle Ruckus. He's an Uncle Tom, perhaps the biggest Uncle Tom to have ever lived.
If this nigga gets elected, America is over. You want this nigga to shit in the same place William Taft sat and his big wife. She don't need to be in the White House. She should be in the WNBA shooting foul shots. You want my brick? You gonna have to pry it from my cold dead hand, Mr. Obama Hussein. I was gonna go to the inauguration and try to crown Obama with a brick. But who am I fooling? My arm just ain't what it used to be. Plus that greedy nigga is really fast. And knowing these liberal activist judges, they might actually try and put me in jail for it. No, I think it's time for me to leave this great country. Oh, I can't bear to see it run by an African Muslim communist antichrist. I just can't. It's just like when Nicole Brown Simpson married that nigga OJ back on February 2nd, 1985. Oh, I knew it was gonna end badly. I told them all. But nobody wanted to listen to old Uncle Ruckus then neither. I want to go someplace I'll fit in, like Norway or Ireland.
What about the Ivory Coast?
Absolutely no Africa. No way. All them countries got nigger presidents, which defeats the whole purpose of leaving this country.
How do you feel being teamed up with your arch enemy?
First of all, we're not a team. Second of all, we're not a team. I've got gas money, he's got the license. We're just gonna drive to Canada and then go our separate ways.
No character in the Boondocks is more notorious than Uncle Ruckus, the comedic embodiment of internalized racism. Candace Owens has been branded by many as a real-life Uncle Ruckus, a black figure who seemingly despises black culture and consistently aligns with those who hold anti-black sentiments. Ruckus despises everything about black people and adores white supremacy, owing to what the show portrays as generations of brainwashing and self-hatred. He even claims to have reverse vitiligo to justify seeing himself as white. It's over-the-top satire, yet the archetype of the self-hating black person hits uncomfortably close to reality.
I want to say happy Juneteenth to everybody who is celebrating Juneteenth and is super upset that I think it's stupid. Happy Juneteenth. Amazing. Woo, feels good. Racism's gone now, right? You got your Juneteenth. I'm so happy that we can celebrate Juneteenth. I mean, the Democrats have taken everything, but at least they passed Juneteenth. I mean, everybody in the entire history of the world has been a slave, but only one group of those people needs a holiday as a consolation prize from Democrats at the same time that there's, I don't know, anything they could solve. Shootings are up 94%, homicides, this city, that city, but at least they gave you Juneteenth. More power to all of you. I'll be celebrating the 4th of July, but I don't know, maybe next year we can do another baseless holiday and keep saying that we're just getting more power in this country because our kids are getting dumber. Our neighborhoods are burning down. I mean, it's just like, I'm getting tired of the stupidity. Like, it's just like, I don't even care. Like, I've been trending for the last 2 days and I don't even care anymore. There used to be like an excitement about the fight for trying to wake people up. And now it's getting like, all right, man, cool. Go celebrate Juneteenth, man. Go have a barbecue, cookout, celebrate Juneteenth. Have a good time celebrating your Juneteenth and you know what you should do on Juneteenth? You should talk about Candace. You should talk about how upset you are that Candace doesn't understand how cool Juneteenth is. Okay? We're done with the Juneteenth discussion. I really just don't care about it. It's dumb. Enjoy your stupid holiday.
Over and over again, Candace Owens' commentary draws a portrait of contempt not just for liberal politics, but for black people who refuse to adopt her worldview. Her critics argue that it goes far beyond political disagreement. One columnist described her career as built on the oxymoron of a black woman who is unapologetically anti-black, and when you examine her language, it's not hard to see why that charge sticks. Owens has repeatedly referred to black Americans who support democratic policies as slaves on a plantation, a metaphor laced with historical trauma, implying not only blindness but subservience. In her view, they are not just wrong, they are brainwashed, shackled by their own ignorance. She often insists that the primary source of struggle in black communities isn't structural inequality or historical oppression, but black culture itself. Crime, poverty, educational gaps, these, she argues, stem from poor personal choices and a culture of victimhood, not racism. She's gone so far as to claim that virtually every problem facing black America is either self-inflicted or the fault of white liberals, while programs like affirmative action, criminal justice reform, or even honest conversations about race are dismissed as patronizing, counterproductive, or anti-white. In many ways, this rhetoric mirrors the darkest echoes of the Uncle Ruckus archetype. Ruckus parroted the talking points of white supremacists. Owens delivers many of the same messages in polished prose, on news panels, podcasts, and political stages. She's painted Black Lives Matter protesters as violent agitators. She's questioned the modern relevance of lynchings and hate crimes. She's framed racial justice efforts not as overdue reckonings, but as manipulations, distractions, or outright lies.
I trust you're still enjoying your Martin Luther King holiday. Let's try not to ruin it too much, but we are going to continue down the Candace Owens line of insane videos. In this particular one, she was actually on a panel, on a Fox panel with Cornel West. And in this particular instance, she claimed that social welfare programs was ruining progress for the black community, and somehow it was taking us down. And Cornel West was stunned by what she had to say.
Years after slavery, the black community was doing better. We were going up, up, up.
That was Candace Owens arguing that, hey, it is socialism that has led to the terrible economic situation for people of color. And the debate that she had was with Cornel West, as you might have seen in that video. Laura Ingraham hosted this debate segment. And Candace Owens said a lot of really dumb things throughout. Let's take a look.
Come on. 100 years after slavery, the black community was doing better. We were going up, up, up. Then suddenly they socialized our community via welfare policies, and the black community started going down, down, down. And you're sitting here supporting a candidate that is advocating for making that on a larger scale. He's saying, we're not just going to do it to the black community, we're going to do it to every community in America. You know his policies do not work. You know that socialism has led to more deaths than anything else in the last 100 years.
So the talking point, I know. So the talking point that Candace Owens has been pushing, she's no longer with Turning Point USA. But when she was at Turning Point USA, she was paid to say that it is not systemic racism that leads to, the disparity in wealth and income between, white individuals and black individuals in America. It's because of socialist policies. It's because of welfare that the black community is being held down. Now, first of all, that makes no sense. We know, and we're gonna debunk that in just a second. But think about who funds Turning Point USA. They're the very corporate donors that corrupt our politicians to push for deregulation, to push for tax cuts. So look, they're very savvy. It is a multi-pronged approach. It doesn't just stop at corrupting politicians. They attempt to corrupt education. They attempt to, corrupt young minds, which is what's happening with Turning Point USA. And it's terrible and it's disgusting because systemic racism is an issue. We've given you multiple examples of that throughout the years. And just hearing her try to talk about history is hilarious, especially considering what she had to say about white nationalism in the past.
When you think about, whenever we say nationalism, the first thing people think about, at least in America, is Hitler. He was a National Socialist, but if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German. And thinking about how it could go bad down the line, I don't really have an issue with nationalism. I really don't.
What they won't tell you about the statistics and the rise of white nationalism is that they've simply changed the data set points by widening the definition of hate crimes and upping the number of reporting agencies that are able to report on them. Black conservatives, when they have the audacity to think for themselves and become educated about our history and the myth of things like the Southern Switch and the Southern Strategy, which never happened.
Yeah, okay. So look, people like Candace Owens lead pathetic lives because they're paid to sell their own identity out. And so that's just the reality of it, because none of the things that she says is true. And so I guess they get paid handsomely. I don't know how they sleep at night. So let's begin to correct the things that she said. First of all, she, on 2 different occasions there, supported white nationalism, which has murdered black people in this country for hundreds of years. It was white supremacy, the idea of that drove slavery, Jim Crow, the Klan, etc. Now you have a African-American woman paid to defend white nationalism. That is disgusting, okay? And then in the earlier clip, she talked about, African-Americans were doing fine for 100 years after slavery until welfare came to help them. Really, they were doing fine? How about the lynchings? How about the Klan? How about the bombings of the churches where little girls were massacred? You think they were doing fine? How about when they didn't allow African Americans to vote, even though they had the right to vote? That's what the 1964 Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act were all about. So the horrible years where they're being oppressed against the law and against the Constitution, you call the good years. And then when someone actually tries to help the African American community, you say, that's when things started to go down, down, down. I mean, it's so perverse. And by the way,
she didn't even mention Jim Crow laws, right?
Of course.
Yeah, she didn't mention any of the stuff that actually matters.
I don't know if she's just pathetically stupid and doesn't know any history at all, or she knows the history of how brutal white nationalism and supremacy has been to African Americans and thinks, I don't care at all. Where's my money? The only color I see is green. You want me to sell out black people and lie over and over and over again about how wonderful white people were to us as they were lynching us in the South? Great, where's my check?
To some, this is brutal honesty. To others, it's a form of betrayal, an internalized rejection of black identity that comforts the powerful and shames the vulnerable. The comparison to Ruckus may be dramatic, even incendiary, but when someone repeatedly aligns themselves with the narratives used to silence, mock, or erase their own people, it forces an uncomfortable question: where does critique end and contempt begin? Owens' willingness to toss black people under the conservative bus is so pronounced that even some on the right have begun to flinch at her rhetoric. Her remarks following George Floyd's murder, framing him not as a victim of state violence but as a violent criminal unworthy of sympathy, shocked even those accustomed to her provocations. She has flatly denied the existence of racial bias in policing and dismissed systemic racism as a fabricated excuse. While she lavishly praised Donald Trump as a truth-teller and political savior, she reserves scorn for black victims of injustice, people whose deaths catalyze national reckonings. This combination of defending the powerful while condemning the powerless has made her a darling to a specific faction of white conservatives. To them, Owens offers something uniquely potent: racial absolution. She says the things they've been warned not to say, legitimizing their grievances through the shield of her identity. Her blackness, paired with her messaging, becomes a form of rhetorical immunity.
And demand justice for. You will be hard-pressed to find this in white America. You'll be hard-pressed to find this even in Latino America. If there is a person that spends multiple times in prison, you are not going to see a bunch of Latinos coming out demanding justice for this person, even if, and I want to be very clear, what I'm saying is not any defense for Derek Chauvin. I hope Derek Chauvin gets the justice that he deserves to be, implemented upon him, and that the family of George Floyd deserves justice for the way that he died. But I also am not going to accept the narrative that this is the best the black community has to offer. For whatever reason, it has become fashionable over the last 5 or 6 years for us to turn criminals into heroes overnight. And it is something that I find to be despicable, and it is something that I refuse to stand by any longer, and I am not going to play a part in it, no matter how much pressure comes from black liberals and black conservatives as some token of people wanting you to believe that this is the only way you can be black, is you have to say this was wrong and that this person was amazing. I won't do that. George Floyd was not an amazing person.
Candace Owens, you'd think in a country like ours, this is the most first world country that's ever been. You'd think the most civilized and the most just. Here you have to consider a murder case through the lens of politics. When you get to that point, haven't you already given up civilization?
Well, that's correct. And what we're really seeing is mob justice. And that's really what happened with this entire trial. This was not a trial about George Floyd or Derek Chauvin. This was a trial about whether the media was powerful enough to create a simulation and decide upon a narrative absent any facts. Whether it was powerful enough to repeat showing and talking about a 9-minute clip that came from somebody's cell phone without adding any context, without showing the full police video, which they could have released. They refused to release the full body cam, which would have added more clarity to the fact that the media was lying. The media came out. Let's not forget this, Tucker. The media came out and told us that this was a man who was just getting his life together. He was a good member of society, and he got mixed up because a racist white police officer had it out for him and killed him. All of that fell apart. All of the facts came out, and all of that fell apart. We now know, of course, that he had enough fentanyl in him. It was 3 times the lethal dosage, 3 times lethal dosage in him when he died. But nobody cares because the media was successful in putting out a narrative, and they kept hitting that narrative. And the reason why the Democrats are happy is because they realize, of course, the media supports them, and now means the Democrats can get whatever they want because they can create a narrative, and then they can treat people like pawns and get them to basically say, if we don't get what we want, we will riot, we will loot, we will send these people out like soldiers to destroy your neighborhoods. And that is exactly what has happened. That has been the determination of this trial. The media and the Democrats now have enough power to bully and to lie to and to create propaganda and to successfully win. And that is what happened. And they are celebrating that win today. This was not a fair trial.
Only one side.
No person can say this was a fair trial.
You just got to take 3 steps back and acknowledge that only one side behaves this way. I mean, a jury in 1995 concluded that O.J. Simpson, despite DNA evidence, hadn't murdered 2 people, and there were no riots. But more to the point, there are a lot of people sitting behind, Trump voters sitting behind bars right now, have been for months, charged effectively with trespassing. We're not speculating. We've seen the charges. No Republican in the Congress stands up for them. Nobody mentions that. Nobody, is for prison reform when it's their political enemies. That's not equal justice, but nobody says it. Why is that?
Because we have two pandemics going on right now. There's a pandemic of ignorance in this country, and that is only allowed to fly because we also have a pandemic of cowardice in this country, okay? So we have people that are purposefully putting out a bunch of ignorant claims, and then we have people that are too cowardly to stand up and say, you know what, this is wrong. There has been so much that has been going on in this country that is wrong. You talk about it, I talk about it, but we do not have people that are sitting in Congress that are willing to take this fight where it needs to be taken. By the way, you bring up Maxine Waters inciting violence. I'm so old, Tucker, that I remember when a man said, march peacefully and patriotically to the Capitol, and that was considered an incite to violence, right? That was like, oh my God, stop the press, get this person disappeared from social media because he is calling for violence. Look at what Maxine Waters says. No one in the media is condemning these remarks. That same media that condemned Trump and his supporters for weeks on end is now defending Maxine Waters. And we both know this is not the first time that Maxine Waters has incited violence. Don't forget, rush down. If you see a Trump supporter, you got to rush them down in the restaurants. They're allowed to do this. They play by a different set of rules, but it's because we allow them to play with that different set of rules. They get away with virtually everything because we don't have strong people on our side that are willing to stand up. You know, and that it's a sad conclusion. It really is so frustrating. And the idea of martyring George Floyd, the way Nancy Pelosi spoke about him, it completely forgives all of the trauma that he brought against his victims while he was alive. You know, a man that served 7+ stints in prison while he was alive, armed robbery being two of the reasons why. And now we're going to martyr him and say that your name will forever be synonymous with justice. Imagine, Tucker, if you are one of his victims that is alive, one of his victims that he armed robbed, and you have to hear that this man's name will always be synonymous with justice. How would that feel to you? I feel like we are living in fiction right now in America. We are losing this country and we are living in fiction because people are not strong enough to call out this stuff. And I feel like I'm one of the only ones who has the courage to say I will not be mobbed into a different reality.
This is why they try and pull you off the internet, because you're not afraid. I just got to ask you, it's frustrating, of course, to watch what you and I have been talking about, where one side ferociously defends its power, the other side abandons its voters to jail. I wonder, though, is there a point where just ordinary people can say, you know, I'm not in control of politics, but you're not allowed to block my street with a protest or intimidate me on my front lawn or break into my store and steal stuff. Like, I'm going to defend my family. I'm going to defend my business. You don't have a right to do that. There's no justification for riots anymore, and I'm just not going to put up with it.
No.
Will we get to that point, do you think?
No, we're not going to. That's why they're already moving the ball. They're already moving it. They're moving the goalpost already because they're saying right now that that's not enough. That wasn't justice, by the way, because what they're saying is what they want is a perpetual revolution. It's why they want people to be ignorant. It's why they want people in the education system to learn nothing but race and how to be angry. They want people acting like toddlers, because when people are ignorant, they act like toddlers. They whine, they complain, they cry because they are absent facts. They are absent knowledge. So we are actually seeing a systemic oppression that is taking place that is rotten. It is throughout the propaganda that's taking place in the mainstream media, and it is working with the education institutions, teaching critical race theory and all of this nonsense to make sure that we are mass producing failures that are angry and that are violent and that are willing to riot and loot on behalf of the Democrats, because that's all they want right now are pawns in their nefarious scheme to take over this country.
It's going to make people radical, unfortunately. That's a shame. Candace Owens, it is great to see you tonight. Thank you so much.
And it hasn't gone unnoticed. Owens' words have been celebrated not only in conservative circles, but disturbingly in white supremacist propaganda. Even the Ku Klux Klan has cited her commentary approvingly because she says what they believe, but with the cultural cover they lack. This dynamic, a black figure who echoes narratives that blame black people for their own oppression, is exactly what the Boondocks skewered through the character of Uncle Ruckus. The satire was meant to feel exaggerated, absurd, but in Owens, some see that caricature slipping into real life, not in the form of buffoonery, but as a polished, media-savvy operator whose message absolves racism by denying it exists. Whether that's strategic or sincere, the impact is undeniable. It raises a sobering question. When the oppressed begin to echo the language of their oppressors, who really benefits? The psychological roots of a mindset like Candace Owens's aren't easy to untangle. Is she truly gripped by disdain for her own community, or is she consciously performing a role, a polished caricature built for applause, attention, and influence? Owens herself would reject both suggestions. In her view, she's not betraying anyone. She's trying to save them. She sees her role not as a saboteur, but as a liberator. Liberals believe that they own blacks still, she claims, casting herself as a modern-day truth-teller who dares to speak the unspeakable. For Owens, breaking from liberal orthodoxy is framed as a kind of emancipation. In her mind, she's pulling others out of intellectual bondage, not pushing them further into it. It's a provocative inversion, one that positions her as a kind of ideological Harriet Tubman, leading black Americans not to literal freedom, but to conservative enlightenment. But to many in the black community, that framing rings hollow. Her version of freedom often sounds indistinguishable from the very narratives that have long been used to deny black pain. When Owens says, "I don't know why people like being oppressed," in reference to black activists protesting systemic racism, it doesn't sound like empowerment, it sounds like erasure. When she mocks those who speak about the legacy of slavery, asking why black people always want to talk about the past while noting she can't think of the last Asian that talked about internment camps, she isn't just expressing an opinion, she's minimizing trauma, severing history from present struggle, and dismissing the very real generational effects of oppression. Uncle Ruckus's self-hatred is so exaggerated that it becomes absurd. But in real life, hearing a black woman echo right-wing talking points that belittle black movements, downplay racism, and ridicule the pain of her own people hits differently. It stings, it divides, it deepens the ache of cultural betrayal. And so Owens finds herself in a familiar paradox, celebrated by those who benefit from her message, condemned by many who share her heritage. In some circles, she's a fearless truth-teller. In others, she's an emblem of internalized oppression, loved by the dominant group, loathed by the marginalized, the quintessential Uncle Ruckus predicament. But before we decide that self-hatred is the full explanation, we need to consider another possibility, one that doesn't excuse her rhetoric but may help us understand it. What if Owens isn't operating from malice but from distance? What if she's genuinely disconnected from the systemic forces that shape the lives of others who look like her? Not because she's evil, but because her own experiences of education, class mobility, and personal disillusionment have insulated her from that reality. In other words, could Candace Owens fit more cleanly into another Boondocks archetype, the disconnected? A figure so buffered by privilege and personal success that the struggle becomes invisible.
If he wins, I think it will literally be the best day of my life.
Tom and Sarah Dubois are also neighbors of the Freemans. They both work on the Obama campaign.
Barack has already changed our lives in so many ways.
How?
Well, I mean, it's no secret that me and Tom have had some problems in the past with our relationship.
Well, it's not like the whole world knew.
But I think ever since we started working together for Barack,
things are totally different now.
Much better. And it's all thanks to Barack. He is such a wonderful, wonderful man. I just think it's about time we had a president who is smart and tall, and charming, and strong, and fit.
Just like your hubby?
This isn't about you, sweetie.
It is always obvious when a couple hasn't engaged in normal marital relations for some time. Where is your wife?
She's in D.C. There was a problem or something with a ticket, so we only had one and I let her have it.
Are you afraid your wife will have lusty sex with Barack Obama?
What? No. No, that's impossible.
I didn't ask if it was possible, only if you were afraid. I can't help but notice you're like a less attractive, less wealthy, less powerful version of him. It is quite understandable for you to be concerned.
Tom Dubois, the mild-mannered, Ivy League-educated prosecutor, embodies the disconnected mindset. He's intelligent, successful, comfortably married, and thoroughly assimilated into a life of suburban ease, but that comfort comes at a cost. He is largely oblivious to the structural racism that continues to shape the world around him. Tom believes his achievements shield him from discrimination and that others could do the same if they simply followed the rules. He is, as Huey often suggests, blissfully and dangerously out of touch. The question is, does Candace Owens share that same blind spot? Many would argue yes. Owens' personal and professional trajectory has been one of upward mobility, public acclaim, and access to power. Born into a relatively stable family, she attended college before finding her footing as a media personality. By her late 20s, she was mingling with political elites and crafting her image as a no-nonsense conservative firebrand. She later married into wealth. Her husband, George Farmer, is the son of a British lord, and she now moves freely in influential circles on both sides of the Atlantic. To Owens, her own success is proof that the system works, that racism, if it exists, is marginal, that personal responsibility, not systemic reform, is the key to progress. Again and again, she returns to a familiar refrain, "I made it, so why can't you?" It's a perspective that has become central to her brand, one that celebrates hard work, ambition, and individual grit, while minimizing or outright denying the structural barriers that continue to hold many people back. Critics say this view is not only naive, but it's harmful. They argue that Owens' material success and elevated social status have created an ivory tower vantage point, from which systemic racism appears to be nothing more than a tired excuse. It's easy, they point out, for someone who lives in wealthy neighborhoods, travels in elite company, and has the ear of political power to say that racism is no longer a serious issue. From that perch, lived realities like housing discrimination, workplace bias, over-policing, and healthcare disparities become invisible. And Owens often seems to lean into that invisibility. She has said she doesn't view herself as disadvantaged because, as she put it, "I've never been a slave in this country." The implication is clear. If you haven't been shackled, beaten, or barred from voting, you have no claim to being oppressed. To many, that's not just a misunderstanding of systemic racism, it's a denial of history's long shadow. The trauma of slavery, redlining, mass incarceration, and generational poverty doesn't vanish because one individual transcended it. In this light, Owens becomes a real-world Tom Dubois, not malicious perhaps, but deeply insulated. Her assertion that single-parent households and bad culture are to blame for the challenges in Black communities echoes Tom's belief that respectability and assimilation are the only paths to safety and success. Her claim that Black Americans prospered under Trump and thus must not be facing serious racism provides another example of this narrative at work, a selective reading of progress that ignores the systemic forces operating beneath the surface. One of the most paradoxical and revealing chapters in Candace Owens' public life traces back to 2007, long before she became a conservative firebrand. At just 17 years old, Owens was the target of a vile act of racist harassment. She received 3 threatening voicemails laced with racial slurs and death threats from a group of white male classmates at Stanford High School in Connecticut. The incident wasn't just traumatic, it was politically sensitive. One of the boys implicated was the son of Stanford's then-mayor, Dannel Malloy. In response, Owens' family filed a federal lawsuit against the Stanford Board of Education, arguing that the school system had failed to protect her. In 2008, the city settled the case for $37,500, but the toll of the experience ran deeper than the legal outcome. Owens has spoken about the lasting emotional trauma, including her struggle with an eating disorder that emerged in the aftermath. At that time, she was publicly a victim, a Black teenage girl fighting a system that failed her.
I don't want to be a part of this culture.
You can stick around if you want. You can go watch the original video for context. I got something to say to Candace. She's probably never going to see this, but I just want to say my piece. Hey Candace. Hey girl. You remember high school? I remember high school. It was quite a while ago. It was like 15 years ago. You remember 2007? I remember 2007. I remember some very horrible things happened to you in 2007, and some very racist white children called you, including the mayor's son, and said some very racist things to you and threatened your life. That should have never happened to you. That was terrible. I remember you sued the school board for that. I remember because everybody was talking about it. My family was talking about it. My grandma was calling up your grandma. The entire school system was talking about it. It was a huge deal. Because the mayor's son was involved, and you had the NAACP backing you up when that happened, and they got you your settlement. I think you should have gotten more, because I am always ready to let racists' pockets bleed. But regardless, NAACP backed you up. The Black community backed you up. I don't know a single Black person who was not backing you up. And I've read some of the statements that you've made about that time and about how no one supported you. And that everybody just threw you under the bus. And I do remember that. I do remember white people were very vocal about their want for violence towards you. It was deplorable. But that was not the Black community. And, a lot has happened since then. You've definitely made a bed for yourself. You're lying in it. That's all good and dandy for you. You've decided to step on the necks of the people who supported you when you were at your lowest. And, you know, those of us who've known you for a while have just watched you. We watched you switch platforms in 2017 when you came out on YouTube. We watched you go from trying to fight the good fight to realizing the good fight don't get you paid and go into where the money resides. I would say I'm not mad at you for chasing the bag, but you're chasing the bag at the expense of your people. And that's some coon shit. Like, you made a career out of being a coon. So when you say you never wanted to be a part of the culture, remember, the culture is the one who supported you when no one else would.
And yet, a little over a decade later, that same Candace Owens would stand on national platforms and declare without hesitation that America is not a racist country. It's a statement that many find jarring not just because it clashes with data and lived experience, but because it contradicts Owens' own past. Here is a woman whose formative years were shaped by an incident that most would call a textbook example of systemic racial failure. Owens didn't just endure racism, she held a public institution accountable for enabling it, and she won.
Candace Owens apparently has a little bit of memory loss. During a recent segment on Fox News, she did what Fox News hired her for. She trashed people in her own community. Take a look.
Who came before Trump?
Right, it was Obama, and Obama did a lot to tear this country apart. I do not remember when I was growing up having all of these race issues, okay? I really don't remember it. And then suddenly towards the end of Obama, we started hearing all of this rhetoric drummed up. It became white versus black all over again. And I say all over again, I shouldn't even say that because when I was alive, this was not an issue.
So Candace Owens is incredibly young. I'm concerned about her memory loss. I mean, it's not good. I mean, it's only gonna get worse as she gets older. But I would like to remind her of something that happened to her earlier in her life. So when Candace Owens was growing up, she actually sued the city that she was living in. She sued for $37,500 after receiving racist phone calls from the mayor's son.
Huh, that's weird because she said that there's never been any racial issues while she was alive. Okay, I assume she misspoke about that. So let's just take her first comment saying, "Oh, when I was growing up, there was no racism until Obama. Obama did." I mean, really think about how outrageously stupid that is. But okay, you get past that, and then you see this. Look, somebody on Twitter, Bradley Coe, said, "Grifter gonna grift."
Totally.
And that's what it is. It's just one giant obvious scam. And they know, and look, so I'll insult Republican voters and Fox News viewers when no one else will, oh, no, but Republican voters, blah, blah, blah. No, they go for that obvious scam every time. Oh, Dave Rubin comes on and goes, oh, you know, the real problem with the California fires is gay people. And what? And they're like, yeah, that's it, that's right. It's the diversity in hiring, gay people and black firefighters. That's right, that Dave Rubin guy, and he's gay, and it's true. Candace Owens comes on and goes, oh, you know, the real problem is black people. There was no racism until black people started it. They're like, yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh my God, she's so right, right? Yeah. So it's such an obvious scam, and they fall for it every time because they want it. They want to believe those pretty little lies. And the reality is she's been a scam artist, just like their dear leader, Donald Trump, from day one.
So, how do we reconcile the teenage Owens who sought justice for being racially terrorized with the adult Owens who deride systemic racism as a myth? Is it denial, reinvention, or something more complex? Psychologically, it could represent a powerful kind of dissociation, a defense mechanism where personal trauma is walled off and reinterpreted in a way that aligns with current self-interest or worldview. Owens' ideological pivot to become a voice that dismisses racism, scorns identity politics, and champions personal responsibility might be, in part, an armor she built after that trauma. Rather than remain tethered to the pain of being a victim, she chose to become its opposite, the strong black woman who insists no one is oppressed, not even by the very forces that once targeted her. So, is Candace Owens merely a product of privilege so far removed from grassroots struggle that she simply can't see it anymore? Or is her disconnect more tactical, a conscious decision to avoid uncomfortable truths that don't serve her public persona? To explore that possibility, we turn to the fifth and final archetype in the Boondocks framework, the Survivalist. Because if Owens isn't misguided, self-hating, or disconnected, Perhaps she's something else entirely, a sharp strategist who knows exactly what she's doing and who she's doing it for.
I'm not a prophet, but sometimes I have prophetic dreams, like the one where I was at a garden party. Excuse me, everyone, I have a brief announcement to make. Jesus was black, Ronald Reagan was the devil, and the government is lying about 9/11. Thank you for your time and good night.
That can't be true! Unhand me! Ow!
You're having that dream where you made the white people riot, weren't you?
But I was telling the truth.
How many times have I told you better not even dream about telling white folk the truth? You understand me? Shoot. Making white people riot. You better learn how to lie like me. I'm gonna find me a white man and lie to him right now.
Robert Grandad Freeman, the irreverent patriarch in the Boondocks, is the embodiment of the survivalist mindset. He's not a crusader or a dreamer, he's a man who just wants to keep his head down, live comfortably, and avoid trouble. Shaped by hardship and history, Grandad has learned that idealism often comes at too high a price. His mantra, keep the peace, stay out of the way, and do what you have to do to get by. He'll bend his principles if it means preserving his comfort. He's not apathetic, he's pragmatic. His survival is his quiet rebellion. Surprisingly, there's a compelling case to be made that Candace Owens operates in much the same spirit, though her survival strategy looks quite different. Unlike Grandad, Owens doesn't shy away from conflict, she often runs headfirst into it. But what if the chaos she courts isn't aimless? What if it's a means of maintaining relevance, security, and personal power in a political and media ecosystem that rewards outrage and punishes nuance? Let's revisit her trajectory. Owens didn't emerge from conservative circles. She initially entered the spotlight through progressive efforts, launching an anti-cyberbullying startup that aligned more with liberal causes. But after that venture faltered and she felt abandoned by the left, she pivoted sharply. The conservative sphere, by contrast, welcomed her with open arms. It offered her something the left hadn't: validation, visibility, and a ready-made platform. And she didn't just walk through that open door, she sprinted. Owens quickly mastered the ecosystem, identifying which talking points would elevate her profile: praise for law enforcement, denigration of Black Lives Matter, scathing critiques of Democrats and so-called victim culture. These weren't just opinions, they were strategies. In an environment where the right was hungry for a black voice to validate its ideology, Owens gave them exactly what they wanted. She became the perfect counter-narrative, offering ideological cover to white conservatives who feared being labeled racist, and in doing so, she built a lucrative brand. Her survivalist playbook is adapting to thrive. Her commentary doesn't always seem principled, it often seems timely. Her sharpest barbs are rarely aimed at the conservative machine that sustains her. When she challenges her own side, as she did in her high-profile dispute with Daily Wire's Ben Shapiro over Israel, she frames herself not as defiant but as embattled and principled, quoting scripture and positioning herself as the underdog standing firm. The result? Even when she breaks ranks, she tightens her bond with her base, reinforcing her image as a lone truth teller, not a heretic. Each controversy, rather than knocking her down, becomes a new ladder rung. When she's accused of trafficking in misinformation or echoing white nationalist rhetoric, she doesn't retreat, she reframes the criticism as censorship, persecution, or proof that she's over the target. This maneuver is pure political jujitsu, turning critique into credibility, outrage into oxygen. It's not just resilience, it's a finely honed survival instinct. In that way, Owens mirrors Grandad Freeman more than one might expect. Grandad's strategy is low-key: avoid rocking the boat, keep the lights on. Owens' strategy is high volume, generate heat, stay indispensable. But the core impulse is similar: do what you must to stay afloat, even if it means compromising, even if it means playing a role. Owens often insists she's driven by principle, not convenience. and perhaps she believes that, but the contours of her career suggest otherwise. Her ideological shifts, her calculated silence on conservative misdeeds, her consistent amplification of narratives that reward her with visibility and income, all point to a survival strategy dressed in the language of conviction. She doesn't challenge the systems that elevate her, she thrives within them. She rarely confronts the conservative institutions that fund her platform, even as she rails against liberal ones. She knows her audience, and she feeds them. That's not necessarily malicious. In a cutthroat media landscape, many public figures learn to play the game or get played by it. Owens has chosen to survive, and not just survive, succeed. This instinct, this knack for maneuvering through controversy and turning friction into fuel, places her firmly within the survivalist archetype. But with one key difference: where Grandad seeks quiet and safety, Owens seeks spotlight and power. Still, the guiding principle remains: self-preservation over self-sacrifice, pragmatism over purity, platform over principle. Now that we've journeyed through all 5 of Magruder's archetypes, the revolutionary, the misguided, the self-hating, the disconnected, and the survivalist, it's time to step back and ask the big question: which one truly defines Candace Owens? Is she part strategist, part ideologue, part performer, or is she a hybrid? Let's gather the pieces and find the answer, because understanding Owens isn't just about analyzing one figure, it's about understanding how legacy, media, and identity collide in the public square, shaping not only who speaks, but what they're allowed to say. Candace Owens defies any one Boondocks archetype. Instead, she manifests a hybrid of mindsets. We've seen her embody elements of Uncle Ruckus's self-loathing, Tom Du Bois' detachment, and Grandad Freeman's survival instinct. We synthesize these threads to understand how Owens, as controversial as she is, forces a conversation about Black identity in today's media landscape. Critics most often liken Owens to Uncle Ruckus, and it's not hard to see why. Owens built her career tossing Black culture and Black people under the conservative bus, embracing Donald Trump while castigating Black victims of police violence like Breonna Taylor and George Floyd as thugs and criminals. She routinely downplays or outright denies systemic racism, insisting white supremacy and white nationalism is not a problem that is harming Black America. In her view, Black communities are to blame for their own ills, not oppression. Everything wrong is due to Black culture and white liberals, she claims. This rhetoric of internalized racism, a Black public figure relentlessly maligning Black people, has led many to brand Owens a real-life Uncle Ruckus. The Guardian bluntly calls her the oxymoron of a Black woman who is unapologetically anti-Black, a darling of far-right punditry built on shock value. In one infamous testimony, Owens even argued Black Americans were better off in the 1950s under Jim Crow than today, a claim that stunned observers as a profound distortion of history. It's the kind of statement that sounds like Boondocks satire, yet Owens delivers it in earnest. A BET News headline declared her ignorance and anti-Blackness thoroughly exposed after a 2019 hearing, adding that social media got her all the way out of here in response. In the eyes of her detractors, Candace Owens has cynically turned on her own, becoming a mouthpiece for the very prejudices that have long plagued Black communities. This attitude mirrors Tom Du Bois' optimistic complacency, except Owens doesn't merely overlook racism, she actively ridicules those who try to address it, and yet her rejection of systemic oppression doesn't arise from ignorance alone. It appears rooted in a deep psychological investment in the myth of meritocracy. To acknowledge structural barriers would be to undercut the very narrative of self-made success that defines her brand. In this way, Owens' detachment is not just intellectual, it's personal. Her public stance against acknowledging oppression may be in part a psychological defense mechanism, a way to protect her self-conception as someone who transcended racial barriers entirely by force of will. To her critics, this is not principled clarity, it's dangerous delusion. They argue that Owens confuses exceptionalism with universality, assuming her individual path can be replicated by those facing far less favorable circumstances. This sense of detachment is especially stark when she claims that issues like white supremacy wouldn't even crack the top 100 problems facing Black America. Statements like that are not just controversial, they are seen as staggeringly disconnected from the lived realities of millions of Black Americans. The comparison to Tom Du Bois grows sharper here. Both characters are surrounded by privilege, both deeply invested in the belief that society is mostly fair, and both struggle or refuse to see how race still profoundly shapes opportunity. But unlike Tom, whose ignorance is often played for laughs, Owens' detachment has real-world consequences. Her platform amplifies narratives that minimize injustice, shift blame onto the oppressed, and reinforce the very systems she claims no longer exist. And unlike Tom, whose blindness is benign, Owens' confidence in her perspective often becomes weaponized, used to invalidate entire movements fighting for equity and justice. In short, Owens may not mean to play the role of the disconnected elite, but in both rhetoric and reasoning she often does. Whether that detachment is unconscious or deliberate, it reinforces a worldview that tells struggling Black Americans their suffering is self-inflicted and their calls for justice are unnecessary. Like Tom Dubois, Candace Owens has the luxury of believing the system works because for her it does, but that belief doesn't make it true for everyone else. So, which Boondocks archetype most defines Candace Owens? If forced to choose one, the self-hating Uncle Ruckus mindset dominates. Owens' rhetoric often aligns with talking points that pathologize Black communities while exonerating systemic structures. Candace Owens exhibits a troubling pattern, minimizing the legacy of slavery, mocking police brutality victims, and espousing views that appear to validate white supremacy, all while claiming to uplift Black Americans. As one writer put it, her messaging has become as consistent as the jeers hurled at school children during desegregation. That level of alignment with the Ruckus archetype, whether sincere or strategic, is hard to overlook. And yet, Owens is not a cartoonish villain. She is a complex, real person whose public identity is shaped by overlapping currents, ideological defiance, personal grievance, social aspiration, and political calculation. Thus, to view her as only a Ruckus type is reductive. A more accurate portrait sees her as a hybrid, a composite of self-hating, disconnected, and survivalist. Owens is not Huey Freeman. She does not challenge the status quo on behalf of the oppressed. She often defends it at their expense. She is not driven by revolutionary ethics, but by reactionary critique. If she is radical, it is only in the sense that she defies mainstream liberal consensus, not that she dismantles power in any meaningful way. Nor is she Riley Freeman. While she shares Riley's performative flair and appetite for provocation, she is far too calculating to be dismissed as misled. If she's misguided, it's in a moral, not intellectual sense, sacrificing community impact for individual acclaim. The cocktail of personas makes Candace Owens uniquely polarizing. To some, she's a truth teller breaking liberal taboos. To others, she's a cautionary tale. What happens when ambition overtakes allegiance, when visibility substitutes for virtue? In the end, Candace Owens functions as more than a pundit. She is a mirror held up to American cultural and political anxieties. Her public existence forces difficult questions. What do we value more, loyalty to truth or loyalty to tribe? Are we drawn to figures like Owens because they disrupt our comfort, or because they confirm our bias in a different skin? What does it mean when the loudest voice defending racial inequity comes from someone who shares its burden? And perhaps most hauntingly, what happens when survival, detachment, and internalized harm converge not in satire, but in real life? Candace Owens may resemble Grandad Freeman in survivalism, Tom Dubois in privilege, and Uncle Ruckus in rhetoric, but the fact that she is all three interwoven, intentional, and unrelenting is what makes her a figure of both fascination and fracture. Aaron Magruder's The Boondocks was always more than satire. Beneath the biting humor and animated punchlines lay a profound meditation on how Black Americans have internalized and responded to the trauma of slavery, segregation, and systemic racism. The 5 mindsets after slavery, the revolutionary, the misguided, the self-hating, the disconnected, and the survivalist aren't just clever narrative devices. They are archetypes drawn from lived experience. They exist in our households, classrooms, boardrooms, churches, and comment sections. We've all encountered the granddad who prefers peace over protest, the Riley chasing clout over consciousness, the Tom who mistakes personal success for collective progress, the Ruckus whose self-hatred makes him a mouthpiece for white supremacy, and the Huey sounding alarms that most people are too exhausted or too complicit to pay attention to. These mindsets persist because they are psychological adaptations to generational trauma. Slavery may be long abolished, but its echo remains in the ways Black people learn to survive, resist, deny, or even emulate the structures that once enslaved them. In many Black families, you can find all 5 archetypes represented at a single dinner table, each convinced their worldview is the truth, each bewildered by the others. These tensions aren't dysfunction, they're the residue of resilience under duress. Through this lens, Candace Owens becomes more than a polarizing pundit. She becomes a reflection of these fractured adaptations. She is not merely playing a role, she is navigating a legacy. Her rise, rhetoric, and rejection by many in the Black community are not anomalies. They are symptoms of a deeper reckoning within Black political thought. How do we survive in a system built to erase us? And what does survival even look like? Resistance, denial, performance, pragmatism. Owens, whether knowingly or not, embodies multiple mindsets at once. She blends the survivalist's self-preserving adaptability with the disconnected's insulated optimism and the self-hating's embrace of the oppressor's narrative. Unlike Huey, who risks isolation to speak hard truths, Owens finds power in aligning with dominant structures, echoing back what they want to hear in a voice they rarely expect, a black one. Her success is not despite the system, it's because she serves its appetite for dissenting black voices that criticize black communities from the inside. But this isn't just about Owens. Her path reveals the moral costs attached to every black public figure who gains a platform within white-dominated institutions. The revolutionary confronts injustice head-on, often at personal cost. The survivalist finds clever ways to stay afloat, even if it means looking away from harm. The self-hating figure becomes a tool of that very harm, reinforcing stereotypes under the guise of independent thought. And the disconnected? They may mean no harm, but their detachment allows harm to persist. Candace Owens has chosen her alignment. She has become a darling of conservative media, often by ridiculing movements that seek racial justice. Whether she truly believes her rhetoric or sees it as a means to power, the result is the same. She has become a lightning rod for debates about race, loyalty, and truth. Her presence raises a thorny but necessary question. When a black figure gains power by saying what white power structures want to hear, are they a symbol of free thought or a pawn in a larger game? This is the moral tension at the heart of Owens' legacy. To her supporters, she's a brave iconoclast speaking hard truths. To her detractors, she's an agent of harm, weaponized against her own people. The truth may lie somewhere in between. Perhaps she is both, a product of trauma and ambition, a reflection of cultural fragmentation and individual resilience. She may not fit neatly into any one archetype, but that's exactly the point. Few people do. Most of us are some mixture of Granddad's caution, Huey's fire, Tom's comfort, Riley's confusion, and Ruckus's pathology. Which leads us to a final, deeper question not about Owens, but about all of us. How do we reckon with the multiplicity of responses within black identity? How do we hold space for the revolutionary and the pragmatist, the visionary and the confused, the broken and the striving? The Boondocks didn't give us a resolution, it gave us a framework. It asked us to see these archetypes not as judgments, but as tools for understanding the varied, sometimes conflicting ways that people carry generational pain. Candace Owens is one chapter in that story. She may provoke anger, disappointment, even pity, but above all, she provokes reflection. And maybe that's her unintentional contribution, forcing us to interrogate not just her contradictions, but our own. In a world still shaped by inequality, what kind of mindset do we choose? What do we fight for? What do we trade for safety? What truths do we ignore to belong? As Huey Freeman might say, the truth hurts. Candace Owens makes us confront that pain. And in doing so, she reminds us that the conversation about race, survival, identity is far from over. It continues in our homes, our politics, our art, and perhaps most urgently, in our mirrors.